Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman. I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. Now, the other night, I got to go check out a documentary that I was just very, very interested in seeing because of the way in which it was produced and being delivered to us. Something that just conceptually alone is mind-blowing. And after seeing the film, I can tell you, watching it's otherworldly, man. So pull up a chair, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, on Peter Jackson's documentary, They Shall Not Grow Old. As I mentioned, this comes from Peter Jackson, and this is his first official documentary. And the title, They Shall Not Grow Old, inspired from a line from a 1914 poem called For the Fallen, written by Lawrence Binyon, that, the line itself is, they shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. And it's the concept that, like, World War I, which is what the documentary, is on, is a war that was filled with 14 and 15 and 16, 17-year-old kids, 18, 19, just young kids who never get any opportunity to grow old. And the title is very fitting in that way. And also the way in which Jackson approaches the documentary just pays such unbelievable homage and tribute to these men, and gives it to you in a way that no one's ever seen before. So before we dive into the stuff that I really enjoyed, just the making of the film, there's some things that you should know and understand. It was created using original footage of World War I from the Imperial War Museum. They approached Peter Jackson and said, "We would like you to do a documentary. Do it on whatever you want, around World War I. Only stipulation, you can only use our footage." And they used over, the crews that worked on the film to put it all together went through 100 hours of this original film footage. I mean, that's how many hours of film these guys had. And most of it's been unseen, but this is film stuff that we've seen in other World War documentaries. When, that really, really grainy black and white film that's 100 years old at this point. So 100 hours of that film footage they had at their disposal to go through and use for the movie. And what they do, we'll get into that, it's mind-blowing. But alongside of that 100 hours of original film footage, Jackson also had over 600 hours of interviews from over 200 veterans from the BBC archives and from the Imperial War Museum's archives. And the crew went through, like I said, over 600 hours and about 200 different veteran voices and interviews. And I think about 120 of those make it into the film. And the way Jackson uses these interviews and these voices, it really just adds so much to the film. But the interesting thing, too, is the way in which Jackson wanted to approach this. After he got the footage, he didn't want it to be like a typical narration or doc feel. But more, he wanted to feature these audio excerpts, of soldiers talking about their actual war memories, in a way that, could tell a story, kind of encompasses the story, but doesn't ever have to focus specifically in any one place. So you kind of really get the feel of what it was like to be a soldier in this war. And because of that, they don't use really you don't ever see any names during the film. You never see locations or dates. It's just kind of this, ambiguous story, right? It's just kind of told. And what's nice is it's structured chronologically, which I like. It kind of gives you a vibe of how the war was going, but it doesn't, fully lock in on any one point in time. So you're just kind of getting an overall feel. And what's wild is the way in which, Jackson decides to use the audio with the video. You get that right at the very beginning of the movie. Like I said, this isn't a spoiler review, but you kind of start off in the square boxed, shot that's much, much smaller than the actual screen is. And you just see all of these veterans walking past the camera. And along with that, you're just getting all these quick little audio excerpts. It's probably 12 to 20 of them, as they're walking for a couple minutes. And this just kind of gets you into the flow of the movie. This is what it's going to be. We're going to hear actual stories from, war veterans while we're watching film that kind of syncs up with the places and times that they're talking about. And what's wild is the thing that, you know, if you've seen the trailers, is obviously the most stunning, is the way in which this film has been restored. You would never in a million years think this was 100-year-old footage. It's wild. And Jackson leaves it in this kind of squared off, you know, original aspect ratio, just black and white. But one, the film is in 3D. I'm not a big advocate for 3D, but in this situation, considering this film is 100 years old, to see this in 3D where there's actual depth to the shots, some of the, you know, you can feel the three-dimensional form of the people and buildings and characters and things that you're seeing throughout the movie. It's wild. And you know, he keeps it in that aspect ratio in just black and white for a good chunk of the movie. And during this stretch, you know, you're just getting all these different little stories that kind of talk about the lead up. How when the war, you know, was, you know, declared, where you know, people ran immediately to go and to hear these stories from, you know, you can tell older war veterans talking about being 14, 15, going to sign up and saying, yeah, I'm 19 years old, and just getting passed through, and the amount of just, they were looking for everybody, man. If you just said the right things, right through you'd go. And you kind of start there, then get to boot camp. You're there for about 6 weeks, and then boom, off to the front lines. And it's spectacular what Jackson does as he kind of transitions you into the actual war, where all of a sudden you're watching, and you've been watching the same thing, and then in the blink of an eye, it's gone full screen and colorized. And from the war all the way through, everything you watch is in living color. Like the footage, you can tell that it's obviously been touched up, some of the movements, and obviously to make it 3D, plus the coloration stuff, you can tell that things have been done. But it looks so spectacular that you'd think that this was actual footage from like maybe 40, 50 years ago, not 100 years ago. It's wild. And like I said, the 3D really works in the film because just to see 100-year-old film with depth and realism to it, it's mind-blowing. And the fact that, like I said, he uses just ambiguous stories, no names to the people who are saying anything. You kind of get to watch this unfold, and they tell the story, but it's just from all personal experiences, and it makes the movie very personable. And it's wonderfly effective in that way. And then just, I mean, like I said, you just add into like everything that's going on, you know, from a technical standpoint and what it took to remaster this in a way where you don't realize this until the movie is over. Peter Jackson says, stick around after the credits. There's like a 20-minute doc about how they made the movie. And he talks about, it's wonderful. If you go see it, you really should stay. You know, he talks about how it's connected to his grandfather, whom the documentary is dedicated to, who was a World War I vet. And, you know, Jackson talks about how, like, he grew up listening to his dad tell his grandfather's stories, you know, and now this gave him a way to really understand what it was like. And telling the movie in the way it does. It gives you that personable feel where you're really getting it from the veteran's perspective and what it was like to be there. And the shots and things that you see are crazy. But what you don't realize is that video footage doesn't typically have audio with it. And there's audio throughout the entire movie, and you're listening to Jackson talk about how they made it and how they had to recreate every sound almost you hear in the movie. So you see these soldiers going through the trenches and walking through mud. You hear them walking through mud and, you know, knocking into things. And all recorded sound, man. They show like guys walking through mud in boots, like taking actual World War I like machinery and firing things off so that the sounds would match with what's on screen. It is absolutely mind-blowing. I don't want to spoil too much more, but if you go to the movie, stay after the credits, because getting to watch how they created this, it's absolutely amazing. I was blown away start to finish with this one, because it's a visual marvel, and what it must feel like to people who are directly connected to World War I or still alive from World War I can't imagine watching this film and seeing it in that realism when we're so used to, you know, those really, really grainy black and white shots. And the story, the way in which he tells it through all these different voices, it's just so effective because it's personable, but it also tells you a good amount about World War I. So I absolutely loved They Shall Not Grow Old. If you were a fan of documentaries, if you're a fan of Peter Jackson, if you were just a fan of film, go see this movie, because it's it's awesome. So that's it, man. Those are all my non-spoiler thoughts on They Shall Not Grow Old. If I keep talking, I'm going to ruin this movie, and I don't want to, because it's really special to go watch. So please go check it out. But now I want to know what you think, man. If you haven't seen it, have we enticed you? I really hope so, because this movie is... wow, especially if you're a fan of Doc's. It's just really, really impressive. But if you have seen it, man, what was your thoughts? I mean, was your head did your head explode? Were you caught off guard when all of a sudden it moved into, you know, color and full screen? And just what did you love, or you know, just anything about you thought about the movie? Leave it down below, man. I'm all jittery because it's so good just thinking about how amazing this is. But leave all your thoughts down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe and little bell so you get alerts every time I make a new video. For the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down, I'm the Seaman. Now I'm signing off. Peace. Well, as I live and breathe, you still here? Check out a video like this one or this one. And hit the subscribe button so you can get alerts and check out everything the Seaman's got at the Cinema Sit Down.